Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Soapbox Slam, where I get on my soapbox and I slam the things that I see going on. Tonight I want to get on my soapbox about something I've been seeing on social media, and I hate to sound like I'm gonna be a traitor to my race or a traitor to the cause, and I'm not. But I am practical and reasonable, and like to call it a spade, or call things for what they really are, and fair across the board, right? And what I want to talk to about is something I've been seeing on social media nonstop, and it's this discussion about equal pay, black pay being the same in the entertainment industry. And while I have to kind of ask everybody to really carefully evaluate what they're trying to say when they're talking about this topic, right? Because I feel like there's several components that a lot of people do not want to take into consideration and truly accept as a reality, right? A reality of the situation, okay? And again, this is not to diminish or devalue some of the artists that are out there. There's been a lot of stuff on social media talking about Taraji P. Henson and Monique and their attack on Oprah and all of these different things, right? Discussing the pay discrepancies and things like that. And I wanted to chime in on this, and that's what I'm on my soapbox about. And again, I'm not trying to be like a traitor to the cause or diminish the black agenda or anything like that. But one thing I think that is important when you talk about the black agenda and you strive for the black agenda, you have to work within the confines of what we have. And so what do I mean by all this, and why is my position probably controversy? And it's not meant to be controversy. It's really controversial. It's really meant to be reflective and factual, so that we can work out of a confines that will actually start to work for us, right? And here's the deal, right? Here's really the deal, okay? Black people only make up 13% maximum of the entire United States population. Only 13%. I've talked about this in other posts, and I think it's important and understand how unique that percentage is in our society, right? As a percentage, it works. There are a lot of pros in that it works for us, and as a percentage, there's a lot of things where it works against us, right? And we have to look at this and evaluate this for what it truly is, okay? And here's the thing. Since we only make up 13, and that's a larger percentage number and everything else, but 13% of the entire U.S. population, it's a little, when you're coming from a corporate standard, and I am not co-signing for corporations, please understand that. And I'm also not saying that the pay discrepancies don't exist. They absolutely do exist, and they are foul. But we have to work within the confines of the entire picture, right? I mean, there's no dispute. White men make $1, white women then make 75 cents, and then black women or black men make 50 cents, and black women make 45 cents, right? Like, it's this kind of, I mean, statistically, and what has been reported are these kind of numbers. Now, that's a reality. That I am not arguing, right? And I'm not arguing for that or against that. I'm actually arguing against that. I think that is foul, but that's not what I'm on my soapbox about, to talk about pay discrepancy in that faction, right? I'm actually here to talk about the social media that has been around Taraji P. Henson and Monique and different black entertainers, right? And entertainers in the TV, film industry and comedian industries, right? Not the entertainers that are athletes, because when you start to throw in the pay scale for athletes, and pay discrepancies when it comes to athletes, well, now you're looking at a totally different skewed margin. And, also as far as entertainers, and you include athletes into the entertainment field, well, now you get these numbers that are boosted up as far as pay equities and or inequities in the industry of entertainment industries. So let's take out the athletes for the time being, right? We'll withdraw that segment temporarily, and just focus on the TV, film, comedian industries, right? Because that's where a lot of the social media hoopla has been coming from. And my best example is the best, simplest example that I can give is when you talk to, like, when you listen to Cat Williams on Club Shay Shay, right? Shannon Sharp's interview show. Cat Williams made a very interesting point that a lot of people, I don't think, really listened to or tuned in on or paid a lot of attention to as its real face value. See, Cat Williams was offered, I think, in the realm of $2 million for his Netflix special, right? Just one of his specials, of which Cat Williams owns. Okay, now let's break this down. Cat Williams owns it, so his own video crew, he paid for his own video crew to come on and videotape his production or his stand-up comedy. So he owns the rights to that, and he sells that to Netflix, and Netflix pays him a certain amount. That amount being about $2 million. And Netflix gave him that amount based on his ticket sales on his concerts or on his stand-up shows. Dollar for dollar. You sold 2 million tickets for that show, or that show that went through 100 shows, 17 cities, right? $2 million on that show. We're going to pay you $2 million for your production, recording of your show. Dollar for dollar based on ticket sales. You bring in this amount of money, you bring in this much revenue based on your ticket sales, $2 million. We are going to pay you what you're worth based on what you bring in as far as your stand-up shows. Conversely, Monique only brings in 350,000 people to her shows. And so Netflix offered her 350,000. And she got into a big fuss because she felt that she was underpaid, while Amy Schumer was paid X amount of dollars significantly higher than her. Well, Amy Schumer's last show that she did, stand-up comedy show, brought in a certain amount of dollars. So Netflix offered her based on what she sold from her stand-up show. So Netflix isn't playing a race game. They're playing a numbers game, right? As any corporation or any business is going to do. They're going to play this numbers game. So, while I don't disagree that Monique is underpaid or Taraji P. Henson is underpaid, I don't disagree with that on a certain level. I would say that I don't know that it's 100% a racial thing. And it's very easy, I myself as a black man, it's very easy to be seduced into the race game, right? Or the race card. But when you take a step back and you just look at it, from a corporate greed standpoint, and you have to look at it from a corporate greed standpoint, you can peel away some of the racial undertones. Now, here's where I would take it one step further. African Americans only make up 10 to 13% of the American U.S. population. If I'm an entertainment production company, Paramount, Viacom, CBS, ABC, NBC, Lionsgate, any of these big studios, right? If I make a movie if my movie is only geared for a specific demographic, that being a targeted group of people based on age, race, gender, that's your demographic. If I make a movie that only targets a specific demographic, then I'm only going to receive X amount of dollars based on that demographic being excited to see whatever it is that I produce. I would argue that there are certain actors out there that are only going to target or draw viewership from a specific demographic of people. Morse Chestnut, Taraji P. Henson, Monique, Tiffany Haddish, they are primarily only going to bring a segment of the population that is going to view them. Red Fox, then you get it. Okay, then there's a point of crossover, right? So you are, as an actor, some of these black actors that we have. For a long time, Cheryl Lee Roth. For a long time, Viola Davis. For a long time, there's only 10 to 13% of a population that is going to pay money to see them. So if I am a big studio and I pay this actor X amount of dollars to bring me back X amount of dollars, then I'm going to not lowball, but I'm going to pay them based on what they're going to bring in. The majority of white people and Hispanic people and Asian people are not going to run to the theaters to go watch Tyler Perry movies. They're not going to run to the theater to go and watch Acrimony 1 and 2, or black films in general, unless that black film gets so much notoriety that it begins to cross over. We do have crossover artists, performers, and we have crossover films. Friday didn't start out targeting the entire American population. It was budgeted and targeted and produced mostly to appeal to the 10 to 13% of the African American population that exists. What made Friday such a success and its crossover appeal, because Friday is one thing, but The Barbershop isn't. The Barbershop, also created by Ice Cube, doesn't really cross over to a lot of the white population the way Friday does. Now, with both of those movies produced by Ice Cube, these are movies that crossed over after the fact, right? These are movies that crossed over where once they were syndicated and put on television, TBS or something like that, and hit the mainstream in that manner, then white Americans are flipping through the channel and they catch a scene, they watch a scene, and all of a sudden now they're hooked and they end up liking it, and they end up watching it, rewatching it from beginning to end, or whatever else. That is how those movies crossed over, right? Unlike one movie that we can talk about that didn't start out that way, was a major studio production. It did well as a crossover, and that was Wakanda, Black Panther. And I mean, it was acclaimed and revered and everything else. Why? Because it wasn't just, it was an all-black cast, but it's one of the few times that you have an all-black cast that crosses over to the public at large. Now, you can go back in time, especially when we were a more segregated society and a more bigoted society. You can go back in time and evaluate the characters of Sanford and Son, the characters of the Jeffersons, right? Now, these are shows that aired on primetime, Different Strokes, Give Me a Break, where you have black actors. Some of these shows were all black actors. Some of these shows were integrated shows, where these actors, especially in that time, were probably paid differently. Now, this is where we get into the real truth of paid discrepancies. And especially during that time, you're certainly going to see a lot more discrepancies and inequities in pay because of the time that it was in. And certainly those actors were underpaid in comparison to the other actors. But when you still go back to, from a corporate standpoint, who's going to watch The Jeffersons, right? I can tell you right now, being biracial, there's probably only one person in my mother's side of the family that would sit down and watch black shows. And that's my mother. I guarantee you, all of my cousins, certainly my aunts and uncles, are not going to sit down and watch The Jeffersons or watch Good Times, right? They're never going to do it. They're never going to do it. And they have black nephews or cousins or whatever else, but they're never going to relate. They're never going to try. Does that make them racist and bigoted? I don't know that I would say that. But they're not going to do it. They're not going to relate. They're not going to understand the humor. They're not going to understand the jokes. They're not going to understand the juxtapositions of relating in society, and they're not going to want to be reminded of that. So if I'm the company that puts those shows on air, I'm only targeting a specific group. Guess what? My advertisement dollars are only targeted for 10% of the population. The things that make television run or a movie studio run, advertisement, the dollars that are shoved into this stuff, is minimized because the targeted population is minimized. Now, one of the most unique things about black people is black people are willing to watch all Chinese movies. They're willing to watch all Hispanic movies. They're willing to watch all white movies, and they're willing to watch all black movies. But moviegoers in a bulk bell curve, we have outliers, but the majority, white people are not really interested in watching black shows. We have outliers, but the majority of white people aren't going to watch Jeffersons. They're not going to watch Good Times. They're not going to watch Monique. They're not going to watch Bernie Mac. They're not going to watch that stuff. And so from a pure financial, corporate, demographic perspective, the amount of money that is going to be generated from these actors performing is only the amount of money that is generated from 10 to 13% of the population. And that's assuming that all 10 to 13% are going to watch that and support it and everything else, which is why it's critical, especially during Black History Month that I say this, that it's critical that when they say support black dollars, that black people, no matter what, as an entire group, unify and spend money on this stuff. That's why we should, simply because from an advertisement perspective, from an endorsement perspective, from a payment perspective, and everything else, we need the top 13%. And I guarantee you 13% of us are not all supporting the TV shows or the movies or all of those things. We're just not supporting that. So again, I am not co-signing the idea that Taraji P. Henson should be paid less. She shouldn't. And where I would get into the distinctions and delineations of the pay is one thing. White people aren't going to be intrigued to go out and see The Color Purple. So this idea that it's going to have some huge box office success is delusional. Only a very select segment of the American population is going to be willing to go watch The Color Purple. It's only going to generate, it has a glass ceiling and a cap on the amount of money it's going to generate, period. It's going to be blocked. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. So, it's delusional and idiotic of Oprah Winfrey to try to blame Taraji P. Henson for the lack of success of the movie. Guess what? It's not Taraji P. Henson's fault, even if she didn't do the press circuit the way you wanted her to do the press circuit. The movie failed because it's a topic that is targeted to only 10 to 13% of the population, and 10 to 13% of that population may not be inclined to want to watch a musical, even if you litter the musical with gospel style music. But also 10 to 13% of the population isn't interested in that topic anymore, or it's just not. You're stuck in a time, Oprah, where you think the things that people were going to pay attention to 30 years ago are what they're going to pay attention to today. They're not. We're just not that sophisticated. As a group, we are not that sophisticated anymore. We have lost our sophistication as an African American race. We have lost our sophistication. We've lost our pride. We've lost our support. That's gone. Now, whatever we need to do to get it back, something needs to be done. But the fact of the matter is, and it's not a diss or a narc or anything else, it's just the truth. We don't got no sophistication anymore. We are not sophisticated people anymore. You lost all of that. Money does not equal sophistication. We are not educated people anymore. You've lost that as a collective group. So, I mean, again, there are outliers, and then there's the majority. Okay, so I'm speaking of the majority in generalizations. I'm not talking about the outliers. Okay. So Color Purple failed because Color Purple isn't a thing that people want to see. Taraji P. Henson and the cast of The Color Purple were paid based on the demographic it was skewed to, and it's a very skewed demographic. The difference between Color Purple and Wakanda is a Marvel character, a Marvel action hero character that has already appealed across demographics, has already appealed to many different groups other than just black people. In fact, it's a character that more white people, as far as comics are concerned, were inclined to watch and read and know about than black people. That's the reason why it had a larger crossover appeal. That's the reason why that movie did so successful and made so much money. And that's why so much money was poured into it. And that's why so many actors were paid extremely well to do that. That's why they got all of the benefits as their white counterparts and everything else. Because the revenue brought in from the production of it matched the demographic that it would appeal to. Period, point blank. Color Purple is not and will never, ever, ever be. I don't care who directed it, who wrote it, or whatever else. The Color Purple will never, ever be Marvel. Period. It will never cross over like that. The only movie that ever crossed over, and it was not issued as a movie on the silver screen, right? It was issued as a television series, and that was Roots. That was put out, and that movie actually crossovered, and it was amazing, you know, to have Alex Haley's books produced into a movie, a television series movie that was put on prime time, and primetime America watched it. I mean, it was quite scandalous when it happened because it was such a shock, right? That was the scandal, being such a shock that so many white people watched Roots. And what a wonderful production that was. I encourage anybody who has not seen the series to actually watch the series Roots, and then the continuation, which did not do so well because it was already done, and it was done many years later, was Queen, which is the matriarch side of Roots. So you have the patriarch side and the matriarch side of that Alex Haley in Roots, right? And Queen is the mother side, but it was a movie that was done years after Roots was done, and so the momentum was not matched. And Queen did not do as well as Roots. But I would argue that if Queens was released the same time Roots was released, like literally the very next month, it would have done equally as well, because it would have kept everybody's attention, right? And Roots and Queens is really the modern day version of that's been, compressed down in a regular television show, is Finding Your Roots by Skip Gates, Finding Your Roots, right? Or he takes celebrities and tracks their roots and everything else. Well, I mean, that's really what Queens and Alex Haley was all about. This is just a modern, reality TV version of that. So again, I am not, now here's where I lost track, but here's where I criticize Oprah Winfrey. What I criticize Oprah Winfrey for is not necessarily what she paid Taraji P. Henson and those actors. I don't criticize her for what she paid them. Because again, the targeted audience and the amount of money that came back from the creation of that it's not gonna recoup a huge amount of profit based on the demographic that it's targeted to. It's just not. Where I criticize Oprah is when she lowballed not getting them trailers. She lowballed not having craft service. She lowballed all of these other facets, having a car, a driver for the actors to come to and from set. Now, these are pretty standard practices in Hollywood across the board. These are standard practices for productions, for big productions, even small productions. I know when I worked in television production, craft services and a ride to and from and picking people up and driving them and everything else is 100% a part of the job. And to not have that, to act like they're going to bring themselves to the set and everything else, is not only a non-union production, right? But even in non-union productions, you provide those kind of services. But it's lowballing. And that's where the criticism of Oprah that I have comes into play. Is you lowballed these actors. You treated them subpar. So you treat your own people less than valuable. Not because of the pay. The pay to me makes sense. The pay makes sense to me. But to lowball them as far as providing trailers, providing craft services, providing a car to and from, to me is a true sign of what's in Oprah Winfrey's heart and what's in those producers' hearts and what's in, and that is where I would strive on the inequity being racially motivated. That I could co-sign for. Because why did you lowball that? Why did you treat them less than what you would treat other actors? No matter what the budget of the film is, those are standards for every kind of production out there. And you undercutted that to save the money in your pocket. That was foul. But to pay them less, that to me I can't really co-sign on, because you're not going to bring, the movie's not going to bring in money. You're not going to make a lot of movie. In fact, I would even say that you only made this Broadway production and this movie production of the musical to toot your own horn. You really didn't do this for society. You did this for your own feather in your own hat. You did this for your own accolades. And I'm saying you, that being Oprah and everybody else. You did this for very narcissistic, selfish reasons. That's disgusting. Because if you were truly interested in anything other than your own agendas to accolade yourself, you would have spent a lot more time trying to find creative writers and come up with new stories to produce. And that's not what you did. Not at all. So you remaking this Broadway and you remaking this into a musical for the movies is not about, it was already created, right? So you redid something, and I would say you didn't even do a good job of redoing it. You redid something just to put an accolade under your name, a credit under your name. You didn't do it because, like in 1988 when the movie came out, it was making a statement, or it was for a a gift to society. This gift has been, Color Purple was already gifted to society as a book by Alice Walker, which won the Pulitzer Prize, and as a movie directed by Steven Spielberg in 1988. Anything done after that is for your own accolade. It's for your own feather in your hat. Again, I am not saying that Taraji P. Henson isn't worth what her equivalent counterparts make. I absolutely think she is worth it. I think that her success on Benjamin Button and Proud Mary and Hustle and Flow and Baby Boy and I said Empire already. I think that her catalog of work is solid as all hell. I mean, Taraji P. Henson is not Meryl Streep, right? So, I mean, while she's a good actress and she identifies black mom, black sister, black woman very, very well, strong-minded. And I mean, she's played a variety of characters. But if there's a stereotype of black women or anything like that, or an image of black women, Taraji P. Henson can fit the bill. Viola Davis can fit the bill. Halle Berry can fit the bill of certain image. I mean, now there are other standards in society of how we view black women that is a totally different soapbox. I say that Halle Berry fits the bill, but Halle Berry is always casted in a role of, a Jezebel. And I don't mean literally a Jezebel as a street walking whore or hooker. I just mean as the good looking black girl that is so desirable and all this other stuff. And I would argue that we as African Americans need to be careful, because when we start saying things like, oh, it's racial, I'm not paid what I'm worth because I'm black, and all of this other, when we start saying things like that, we dismiss a whole lot of other variables that are taken into account that have nothing to do with them being black. But it's very easy, and I do it myself. I've said it before. I do it myself. It's very easy to jump to the racial issue without considering the larger picture and the other variables. And we unfortunately have to pull ourselves back and dig a little deeper to truly find out what is the real cause. I would continue to say it's very arrogant for black people to want to have more than 10% of the commercials that are out there, right? Why should we have 25, 30, 40% of the commercials of black commercials when we're only 10 to 13% of the population? Why should we reflect what production of commercials and movies and things like that? Why should we be reflected? Everyone says, oh, the token black, the token this, the token that. When it comes to a mainstream production of something that is supposed to appeal to white America, or to white and Asian Americans, or to white, Asian, Hispanic Americans, why would that cast be more than one or two black people in the production? We only make up, or we're only bringing 10% of the population to view it. We're not bringing 40% of the population to view it, which is what white people are bringing, 40 to 60%. Actually, Hispanics making up 30% of the American population at this point. I mean, why should we have more numbers in a show than what Hispanics have? Because they're bringing more people to viewership, which is bringing more dollars back, more advertising dollars back, So I'm not saying this is right or wrong. What I'm saying is we need to be careful about the arguments that we're making. And how do we turn this around in our favor? Well, one thing is, there are a lot of advantages and disadvantages. I would say one of the disadvantages of only being 13% of the population is that we're only going to get 13% of the dollars allocated for it. Now, having said that, it's a disadvantage and advantage. The advantage of only being 13% is it is such a small number that we can negotiate to always have that pure number, which is where we have been failing by our representatives in politics, where we've been failing as far as how taxes are redistributed and allocated towards communities. Being only 13% of a population, you can demand that full top dollar. I mean, I personally think whatever the reflection is of the community, they should get back exactly what their reflection is. But that's a totally different soapbox or whatever else. But I am just simply saying that as a whole number, if we operate more as a monolith, if we operated more like that, then we would be able to demand more dollar for dollar representation to match 13%. I just think that we should not expect more than 13%, right? Why if I'm making a show that's supposed to appeal to Americans, but the majority of Americans are white Americans with white American values, or Hispanic Americans who majority of Hispanics want to be like whites, but that's a whole nother discussion as well. But if I'm creating a show that's real targeted group is this group, then I'm not going to spend a lot of money on and in black issues or black people or black issues and black peoples when the target is not them. So again, Taraji's talents are worth an equal pay, yes. And for these movies, she should absolutely be paid based on what she's going to bring in. And I think that there should be equality in the pay, but I think we need to also be realistic in, you do realize that if I pay this artist an X amount of dollar that is equivalent to what other people make, but that when they make that a movie, they bring X amount of dollars back. What ends up happening is I end up paying an artist like Taraji P. Henson the same that a white counterpart makes, but that white counterpart brings back X amount of dollars from people going to see it, and Taraji P. Henson isn't going to bring back that X amount of dollars. So as you do the numbers and as a percentage of what I paid for the talent and what I got back of what the talent produced and what I got back for their performance, I'm always going to lose. And that's unfortunate, but I'm always going to lose. And part of the reason why I'm always going to lose is because the entire black community isn't paying the money to see, and this is why it's so important. Black people need to support black productions, even if they like them or they don't, because it validates the pay, number one, and then number two, it allows for corporations and businesses and studios and everything else who are willing to invest to actually make some money back, because everybody's in it to make money. Now, you can have the altruistic belief, and believe me, I do have an altruistic, in my heart of hearts, I wish everything was equal and everything else. I really do. And I would try to fix, my goal is to try to fix things in society that stop delineating all of this stuff, and kind of make things, well, I mean, I'm just a dumb nigga, blue collar worker who's altruistic, bleeding heart, whatever. But unfortunately, I do believe in enlightenment, and I do believe in a higher frequency, and I do believe in a better state of human being, and we're not there yet. And so these are the confines that we are working out of. And unfortunately, and it is unfortunately, part of the reasons why Taraji P. Henson and Monique and some of these artists do not make the same amount of money is because they don't cross over and appeal to other groups of people. There's only a very select group of people who are going to pay for them and watch them. And it's not even the full 13% of the American population. It's an even smaller segment that's going to watch Monique or the Parkers or watch Bernie Mac. The beautiful thing about Bernie Mac is he was beginning to cross over, and I believe he would have been an extremely successful crossover artist, because more and more people, white people and other people, started to take notice of him and were willing to pay to see things that he was in, and that's what would have made his pay scale go up. But until you break that threshold that you truly become crossover, you can't demand. It's not that you can't demand. I just think you have to take in consideration the other variables. And I think Monique jumped the gun on her pay thing and calling it a racial issue, when I don't know that that's actually accurate. I think that Taraji P. Henson is jumping the gun, kind of. Women are underpaid. Fact. Women are underpaid. Fact. Women are paid less than men. Fact. Right? That's a fact. So that argument that she's making, 100%. Fact. Oprah Winfrey lowballed her, not just with dollar pay, but because she didn't give her a trailer, she didn't give her transportation, she didn't give them craft services, those types of things that are pretty standard, especially for a production that Oprah Winfrey's name is on and Steven Spielberg's name is on and comes out of Lionsgate and those kind of studios. There is no reason why those bare minimums were not met. Now that fact, Oprah Winfrey, foul for that. That's a fact. But it's not a fact that she might have been paid less to make that movie, because that movie isn't going to make a lot of money. Fact. That movie is not going to make a lot of money. Acrimony is not going to make a lot of money. Even the whole Tyler Perry franchise, right? Tyler Perry today, the reason why he excelled today is because, again, his movies were put on regular television, were syndicated on regular television, and so then white people got to see his slapstick humor. But until then, all of his money came from the fact that he was doing plays, and those plays were very geared towards Black Americans. Now, he made a lot of money off of that, but it wasn't the money that he made until he crossed over, and that crossover happened once he started going into television, and they started seeing the amount of people based on Nielsen reports, the little spy inside the boxes that statistically record what shows you watch. And once that was recorded and they were seeing, oh wow, there's a lot more white people watching Tyler Perry's slapstick humor, voila. He started to make more and more money and get more and more advertisement dollars and everything else. So, again, it's a shame that Tyler Perry has gotten so greedy that he isn't going to pay his artists the equivalent of what other artists makes, and he doesn't want to pay union artists, he doesn't want to pay union writers, he doesn't want to pay all that. So he's gotten so greedy with his money, and it's gone to his head, that he doesn't want to operate the way other studios operate, and he's not going to pay. And a part of the issue is, if I play these Black artists what they're worth, and they only bring back X amount of dollars, then I'm paying more as a percentage. I'm paying more for them than I am going to get back from the production, in theory. And that is the discrepancy. So again, I'm not discrediting the argument or the issue of the pay. All I'm stating, and why I'm on my soapbox, is, a lot of people make blanket statements saying that it's because they're Black and nobody, they're Black artists and it's racial and these places are racist and all this other stuff. And that would be extremely misleading and misguided. I think that the argument digs deeper into the demographics and what kind of money is coming back based on the demographic. Whether I don't get enough advertisement dollars into it because I'm only advertising to a segment of the population. I mean, Chick-fil-A isn't going to pay for an advertisement spot on a Black network. Because Chick-fil-A and Mormons are racist people, and I hate you. They're bigoted people. I mean, it's in their Bible. They think Black people are subhuman. It's in their Bible. That's the reason why I say it. It's in their Bible. They brainwash their people to think that people of color are lesser human beings. That's in their Bible. I'm going based off their Bible. To me, that concept is a racist concept, but that's in their Bible. So Chick-fil-A isn't going to spend money for advertisement dollars on black networks, A, because they think we're subhuman people, but B, not a lot of black people are going to Chick-fil-A. So they can't get advertisement dollars from Chick-fil-A. And so on and so forth. All kinds of companies out there. You know, I hate to say it, and this may be a very flippant comment, but Home Depot and Lowe's aren't going to spend a whole lot of money advertising to a segment of the population that doesn't own a lot of homes or take care of their homes, right? Why would they spend a lot of money advertising to them when those aren't the things that that demographic group is willing to spend money on? Doesn't add up. So these are the things that we have to think about when we make these kind of comments, and we have to consider that as a group to become a monolith and change those image. Because if we fix those things and we change those image as a monolith, then we can actually demand top dollar. We can demand top pay. That's how the Jews do it. Again, Jews, a very small segment of the population, but they're able to demand high dollars, top dollars, things like that, right? And they are a small demographic, but they're able to demand such high things because they participate in the involvement of all the activities that are advertisement and everything else, right? So I got long-winded. This is a long one. You know, this is what I'm on my soapbox about. We have to be careful. We have to be careful and better state what we're trying to say, because when we make these blanket comments, we turn off our counterparts, white, Asian, Hispanic people, and everything else. We turn them off to our cause because we sound like we're just complaining, and we're not complaining about the right things. So that's what I'm on my soapbox about.